What a massive development is happening in Europe and in the United States right now, folks. This is the story everyone needs to hear. If you're new here, I'm Andrew Meet Rich. I used to work inside a state-run media outlet, saw how stories were twisted to fit the narrative, and I walked away. Now I'm independent, I speak freely, and I tell you what really matters. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve on global events that mainstream media won't touch, hit that subscribe button right now. Here's the breaking news from the United States of America. Hundreds of National Guard troops have been officially deployed in Washington. Donald Trump announced that troops in the Capitol are needed to curb crime, and that operations in Washington could serve as an example for other cities run by Democrats. Now about 800 National Guard soldiers have been sent to Washington to help local police fight crime and ensure the security of monuments. Under Democratic rule, monuments were damaged. There's no getting away from that. Perhaps to erase people's memory, as folk wisdom says, without a past there is no future. But now everything will change. It will change dramatically. Naturally, they will remove tent camps. Patrolling guardsmen will be equipped with protective gear. Weapons will be available if necessary, but for now it will remain unarmed. At least, that's what they report. And here's another bombshell from the US that will shock you. It also became known today that tens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees will begin losing legal protection, possibly even from today, if the Donald Trump administration doesn't take action. Although Donald Trump previously promised that everyone would remain in the US until the end of the war, it should be immediately recalled that Ukrainians arrived in the US under a program called Unite for Ukraine, a temporary legal program created by the Joe Biden administration. The key word is temporary, but this status wasn't just granted freely. It came with the condition that people find a private American sponsor who would accept them, vouch for them, and so on, so there wouldn't be a mass influx. They created such complications. There would have been a mass influx from Europe to the US if there had been simpler conditions. But in fact, there was no normal reception as happened in other countries, which already says a lot. Now those who arrived before August 16th, 2023, are still covered by a separate program called Temporary Protected Status, but approximately 120,000 people who arrived on that day or later will be in the country illegally from the moment their humanitarian permit expires. That's how it was announced. So we're watching what happens next. The intrigue here is enormous. Most likely Donald Trump's decision will be made after the negotiation process that will take place in Alaska today, which we'll discuss tomorrow. Are you seeing the pattern here? Trump is completely reshaping American policy while the establishment panics. If this kind of reporting matters to you, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you think about these developments. Now let me tell you what's happening across the pond in Poland, because this connects directly to Trump's new approach. After Donald Trump made it clear that he would prefer to communicate with Polish President Karol Nadrowski instead of Prime Minister Donald Tusk, Tusk didn't like this, as you know. Trump didn't want to communicate with him and instead invited Nadrowski to a video conference with other European Union leaders. This looked like a public sidelining of the Prime Minister. Tusk's popularity among the people is also rapidly declining. This information is for those who don't know. Dissatisfaction is growing, and now there's a new incident. Donald Tusk arrived for a meeting with the new president at the presidential palace in Warsaw, where Polish President Karol Nadrowski officially works and resides. But Prime Minister Tusk had to wait like a schoolboy waiting to be invited into the principal's office. This is the most appropriate comparison in this case. They even filmed this on video, which you can see, and from the outside it's very noticeable how awkward it is for Prime Minister Donald Tusk. He can't openly show his irritation, he can't give orders not to film, so the head of the Polish government sits there understanding that not only Poland will see this. This also shows that the head of the Polish government has very complicated relations with President Karol Nadrowski, to put it very mildly, and this is just the beginning, please note. But let's see what happens next, how events will develop further. The intrigue is preserved, it's enormous. That's the right way to put it. This is all gradually leading to something bigger. Most people in Europe are simply tired of American Democratic appointees who lack independence. As Donald Trump said about Democrats, they are radical leftists and they're fake media. By the way, I talk about this constantly, repeating what Donald Trump says. Now let me show you what's happening in Germany, and this will blow your mind. Something incredible is happening there that nobody saw coming. Right in the heart of Wiesbaden, the capital of Hesse in western Germany, stands the former luxury palace hotel. This place was once a symbol of imperial luxury, its foundation laid personally by Kaiser Wilhelm II himself. But times have changed, And now this grand hotel has become a temporary home for newly arrived people. And as we all know, there's nothing more permanent than temporary. Recently, they evicted tenants from 80 apartments that had been converted into social housing. They planned a massive reconstruction, but the project stalled, costs skyrocketed to 40 million euros, and they simply ran out of money for obvious reasons. So to keep the building from sitting empty, the city company moved in 13 families receiving civilian benefits. Think about this. People who decided to flee to Germany never could have imagined they'd be living in a luxurious hotel, a symbol of imperial luxury. That's how things work in our time. But here's an even more unusual story from Germany today that many simply didn't expect. According to German media sources I'm referencing, security services are sounding the alarm about former professional boxer and DJ Hana Hansen. Just recently, she appeared in public with flowing blonde hair and sportswear, but now she wears a hijab and is surrounded by what they call radicals with criminal records. A fresh report even dedicates an entire chapter to her. According to this report, she uses her own story of conversion to Islam to call on girls to wear hijabs, abandon secular lifestyles, and accept Sharia law. This is how people change. This is what's being reported today. But wait, there's more scandalous news from Germany. And you need to hear this. A scandal is erupting around leftists from a movement called Disarm Rheinmetall. Activists announced a rally against the weapons company in Düsseldorf at the end of August. The organizers of this action are calling to approach Germany's most famous leader and ask him face to face about the fate of families in Gaza and Yemen who lost loved ones due to weapons manufactured by Rheinmetall. They want to look into this man's eyes and see what's in them, but the activists themselves are worried about their own safety and in their appeal demand that video surveillance be turned off on Papiger Street during their action. Although Papiger is just a director, he doesn't play any real role. The real owners, the globalists, are naturally in the shadows and you can't look them in the eyes. But let's see how this action goes. And here's another shocker. The CEO of Deutsche Bahn has been fired due to systematic train delays. The general director of the German railway carrier, Richard Lutz, was removed from his position due to constant train delays, outdated infrastructure, and the poor financial condition of the company. Germany's transport minister, Patrick Schneider, has already announced the termination of the contract with general director Richard Lutz. Under his leadership, the share of trains arriving on schedule dropped to an anti-record 62.5%. Now the German Taxpayers Association is loudly calling for a reduction in the number of civil service positions. The reason given is the sharp increase in pension costs and criticism of excessive privileges. But now times have changed, as you know, and privileges can no longer be discussed. According to the Federal Ministry of the Interior, about 5,300,000 people are employed in Germany's public sector, about a third of whom are civil servants. Unlike employees, they don't pay contributions to the pension system, which creates an additional burden on the state budget. Therefore, Carsten Linnemann, deputy chairman of the CDU-CSU parliamentary faction, calls for significant restrictions on new appointments to the civil service. In his opinion, new appointments to the civil service should be made only in key sovereign areas, such as police, financial administration, and the judicial system. These are the changes that will happen. Meanwhile, the right-wing party Alternative for Germany, which is rapidly gaining popularity as you know, has confirmed its plans to establish a new youth organization. The founding is planned for the end of November. The founding assembly is scheduled for November 29th and 30th. At this assembly, the leadership of the new organization will be elected and decisions will be made about the name and logo. The plan to establish the new organization was justified by the right-wing party's desire to gain greater influence over party youth. They'll be expanding at full capacity. Most likely there are grandiose plans, so we're watching carefully what happens next. Write your opinion about what you think about everything that's happening. I wish you peaceful skies and say goodbye until tomorrow. Believe me, I always have something to share with you. All the best.